The wait is over. The football fast ends tomorrow. North Carolina Central versus Southern, the MEAC-SWAC Challenge. I have the pivotal matchups and keys to victory that will decide this big-time game. Oh, yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current site expert at Who Dat Dish and contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Make it Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets now. I'm excited. I'm through the roof. I'm overjoyed. I can't think of too many cliches to give you. I don't think that it would even properly sell the way that I'm feeling right now because my time is here. Football is really here. I know a lot of people like the offseason. They like talking about recruiting classes and quarterback battles and ranking teams that have yet to play a football game. I know that people love that, and I appreciate those who love it. That ain't my time. My time is when football is here. My time is when we step between the lines. My time is those 60 minutes that we're about to see Saturday evening between North Carolina Central and Southern. So for my new everydayers, or maybe some everydayers who just need a refresher, let me tell you how the game of the week goes. We have 3 matchups, 2 storylines, and a key to victory for each team. So in descending order, we'll go 3, 2, 1. This is the game or the episode before the game. So let's count down to the biggest moments. Now, kicking it off with our first of 3 matchups, North Carolina Central's wide receivers versus the Southern secondary. Now, this matchup is something that I think is very predictive because I talked about how the North Carolina Central wide receivers are going to have to step into a bigger role in 2025. You have Chance Peterson and you have Chauncey Spikes as returning guys who had more than 10 catches. So I will highlight those guys, but also leave room for anybody else to step up because obviously it's not going to be a 2-man room. It's going to be 3, 4, maybe 5, depending on how they decide to disperse those targets. But you're going to have a lot more players in that wide receiver room who are going to be active participants than just Spikes and Peterson. However, with those being known, and I kind of use air quotes because I still think they need to show a little bit more, but known commodities, I'm going to hone in on them. The reason I identified the North Carolina Central wide receivers versus the Southern secondary, despite question marks of who's going to pop, is that Walker Harris, and this is just off my recollection, I wish I had something that I could go back to as far as like a throw chart from his 2024 campaign, but from my memory, Walker Harris had no fear of being aggressive. He had no fear of targeting deep. Not only did he not have fear of targeting deep, I thought he went to the deep middle quite a bit. I didn't think that he necessarily went deep boundary. I thought he was really active in that seams area of the field, middle, right between. If they play it too high, right in that slot in between the 2 safeties. I think that I'll be interested to see how Southern plays. If Southern plays a lot of too high, I think you're going to see a lot of deep middle. I really do, because Walker Harris is interesting. He's going into his 2nd season, and it sounds like he may calm down a little bit. But when he calms down, does that mean he's also going to be less aggressive? Because one of the things that we talked to Trey Oliver about was Harris feeling like he needed to win it all on every single play, feeling like he needed to be boom or bust every single, well, not boom or bust, but it ended up being boom or bust, where he was always looking for the boom every single play. With that comes a lot of deep shots. But with the understanding you don't have to play like that, do we see more 10 to 15 from Walker Harris? Do we see more just quick screens and let the guys get the ball in their hands and run from the offensive coordinator, Matt Leone, right? Like, these things are question marks that we don't know yet. But if I had to base it off of last year, I think Walker Harris is going to be aggressive. I think Walker Harris is going to try to push the ball down the field, and I think he's going to attack the deep middle of the Southern secondary. Unfortunately for him, Southern has a pretty good safety tandem in Horatio Johnson and Herman Brister III. So now the question becomes, when you're going downfield, whether you're taking, slot guys who run downfield or maybe outside deep post, things of that nature. But when you're going downfield and you're having to go against Johnson and Brister, how often are you going to do it? I think that's a question that I need to have answered. And I don't know if that's a season long, let's just evaluate Walker Harris as a quarterback. But I think that doing it in this game will be something that will be a part of his evaluation. I do think that if you're looking at top flight quarterbacks, you have to understand who you're going against. Sometimes it's, I don't care, I'm that good, I'm going to beat your safeties. And sometimes it's, I don't need to take that harder throw when I know that the degree of difficulty here versus here is way different. The margin is way larger, right? Than maybe I understood in my first year as a starter. So with Walker Harris, I'm looking at Peterson, who has a 34-yard catch versus North Carolina, 36-yard catch versus Howard, 34-yard catch versus Campbell, a 30 and 42-yard catch versus Delaware State. Chauncey Spikes, a 66-yard catch versus South Carolina State, a 43-yard catch versus Howard. And in that Howard game, I think he had like 5 targets downfield, 5 deep targets. Now, this to me is going to be something to watch because I just want to see what kind of quarterback Walker Harris is. And he's not dumb. Let's be very clear. Walker Harris is a smart quarterback on the field in the sense that I remember in the first game against Alabama State last year, they took Caleb Alford and James Burgess. They shut down that boundary. And Walker Harris understood and didn't target that boundary. This time, instead of facing a really strong cornerback duo, you're facing a really strong safety duo. Now, Walker Harris has been aggressive in the past, but maybe understanding who he's going against, he doesn't target that deep middle. Or maybe they just slide over and go single high and take away some of that. It depends on where we're talking about. But anyway, let's move to the next guys. Chris Mosley versus Trey Holly. It was one that I was worrying if I was going to do because I think that Trey Holly is too much a part of this game to not mention, even though I feel like I've mentioned him continuously throughout the season. Or through this last couple of weeks of the offseason. I'm going to be very slight on him. I think that Trey Holly, we'll see if he's going to be the engine of the offense. With question marks at quarterback on who's going to start, and we'll get into that in segment 2. But with question marks at quarterback about who's going to start, it wouldn't shock me to see the run game be the engine, and I think he's going to be the leader of the run game. Remember, he has 11 carries through his collegiate career. There's a good chance that Trey Holly not only matches, but doubles his career total in carries. I still have a lot I want to see from him. We talked about that yesterday. That was pretty much the entirety of segment 1, where we talked about how much of the run game will impact, or how much the run game will impact Southern and who will impact the run game. And it's not just Trey Holly. So then you look on the other side and you have Chris Mosley. Chris Mosley, what's interesting to me is what makes North Carolina Central such an interesting program, not just a team. So allow me to step back from the Southern matchup for a second. What makes North Carolina Central such an interesting program is they continue to have this passing of the torch moment that is obvious and creates excitement, right? You know who's going to get the ball. You know who's going to get the next snaps under center, and you're excited about it, right? So when you go from Davius Richard to Walker Harris, we've been talking about Walker Harris for 3 years at this point. Let's go ahead and pass the torch. When Walker Harris leaves, I saw Joshua Jones last year in the season finale. I heard about what he's doing in camp. I'm excited. So that quarterback progression is natural. Richard, Harris, Jones. It's very similar at running back, where you had Latrell Collier, and you knew Jamari Taylor was up next. And now you know Chris Mosley is after that. We saw what Jamari Taylor was able to do when he stepped into the role, 1,100 yards. I don't know if I'm predicting that for Chris Mosley, but what I will tell you is on only 24 carries, he averaged 10 yards a carry. On only 24 carries, he was 10 yards a pop, and that is a high clip rate. He got the ball significantly less than Jamari Taylor did when he was the secondary running back. So I think that Taylor was probably a lot more prepared for this role, but I'll be interested to see if Chris Mosley can have a pop again. He's not going to average 10 yards a carry, right? But he may average 5. He's not going to see 24 carries. He might see 124, 150. I'll be interested to see that. And then he also on that left side of the line has Trayvon Humphrey, AC Moore, Noah McKinney, I expect them to run left a lot, and I expect that to be a pretty successful place and could be the engine towards them winning the offense. Hope Trey Oliver is happy. I called his big boy as the engine. But then lastly, you got Southern's interior offensive line versus Thomas Johnson. And Johnson is a guy who, if you go look at the North Carolina Central notes, the pregame notes they have, it's on their website so everybody can see it. There's a section where Trey Oliver is just raving about Thomas Johnson, right? Like, he is raving about Thomas Johnson. And he only played 3 games last year. He had 5 tackles for a loss and 4 sacks. I'm not predicting that pace. I wouldn't even predicted that pace last year, right? Because if you multiply that to go through an entire season, you're looking at a 20 tackle for loss, 12 sack guy. If he does that, okay, we're talking MEAC player of the year levels, right? Like, that's what we're talking about then. So I'm not going to exclude it, but I'm also not coming in expecting it. I'm not asking for it. But I do think he has the potential to be a 10 sack guy. I don't think a double-digit sack season is out of the realm of possibility for Thomas Johnson. He's only listed at 240 pounds. These weights do tend to fluctuate, and he's listed as their nose guard. Positions also tend to fluctuate. But for me, he's lighter than I would like there, but I think that he can use the quickness, which is why you see him be able to be disruptive like this. So it was only 3 matchups, and I mean, one was carried by a 3-sack game, but it was only 3 games. So, he had a sack in the other one. So that's technically 2 out of 3 games that he got in the backfield. And in the one game he didn't get a sack, I think he had a half tackle for a loss or something like that. So he was consistently getting in the backfield. I want to make sure I talk about how his distribution was. But Southern's interior offensive line, to me, that's not something that has been overly discussed. That's not something that's been overly discussed or overly praised, because everybody's talking about how is that interior offensive line going to fare. This is going to be a test. Johnson is coming back. There's obviously high expectations for a player like him. I want to see how does the interior offensive line hold up against the pressure from North Carolina Central, because interior pressure is going to mess up Cam McCoy. It's going to mess up Jalen Woods. It'll mess up Trey Holly, right? So I'm just going through the quarterbacks and running backs. You'd much rather have a guy coming off the edge. You can run away from him. It's a little bit farther and harder for him to get there. You can do rollouts. You get pressure right up your face. It's difficult to scramble out. It's difficult to do a lot or push up the pocket, because you don't really want to arc around, right? You'd rather step up into the pocket if you're a quarterback. I think that interior offensive line for Southern is going to be key. It's going to be critical in deciding how this game goes. But before we get out for segment 2, I need to mention Malcolm Reed, because unfortunately there is no place to put Malcolm Reed in this conversation, but he is too talented of a player to not mention. He is a guy who, if I knew Cam McCoy was starting, I would have probably put Malcolm Reed in this conversation. And I know exactly how I would have used it, but we don't know that for sure. Matter of fact, instead of talking about Malcolm Reed and raving, because I've done that before as well, let's talk about Cam McCoy, Jalen Woods in the Southern quarterback situation, because who really knows what's going on other than Terrence Graves, as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Rougiette. And guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis, or maybe you even tried them, right? Maybe you tried that, been there. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiette Ready. Rougiette Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. I think we all know what that's for. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rougiette Ready kicks in fast. 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and on average takes effect in 15 minutes and can last for up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Rougiette might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. So head to Rougiette.com/LockedOnCollege and use the code LockedOnCollege to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege and use the promo code LockedOnCollege for 15% off today. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rougiette website for full safety information. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked on HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day. Every day for your second listen, check out Locked on NFL. The collegiate season begins tomorrow. The NFL season isn't that far away. That's my baby. Check out Locked on NFL for my guys, Chris Carter, the host of Locked On Steelers, also an HBCU alum. Catch him in Wig on the barbershop, Locked On NFL. Anyway, let's continue rolling as we take a look at the storylines to watch. I mentioned how I would have included Malcolm Reed in this conversation of matchups had I known that Cam McCoy was going to start. But that brings me to my first storyline. Who's going to be the starting quarterback for Southern? Or more specifically, and probably more interestingly, how many quarterbacks do we see for Southern? That's a question that I honestly have two answers to. If it's Jalen, or three answers. Number one, I feel like we're going to see both of them. That's first off. I think we're going to see both quarterbacks for Southern. If Cam McCoy starts, I think it's less likely that we see Jalen Woods. But if Jalen Woods starts, I think that you'll at least see a package to use Cam McCoy's legs. It wouldn't shock me to see a package where it's like, okay, cool, we're going to run the read option, or we may fake the read option, or maybe an RPO or something like that where to trick the defense. But I think his legs are so dynamic that you try to get a package for Cam McCoy. I don't necessarily know if you try to get a package for Jalen Woods. Now, that thought process only works if Southern is going to work with one quarterback all day. One quarterback is the true starter. And I don't count snaps where they're both on the field. That's just for trickery purposes. If you see McCoy and Woods on the field together, that's just to try to dupe somebody. Do not count that as two quarterbacks playing, in my opinion. When I say two quarterbacks, I mean two guys who are legitimately under center. Specifically, I think you're going to see drives for both players. I think that Cam McCoy and Jalen Woods are both going to see reps, multiple drives, multiple possessions, right? Like, I don't think it's just Cam McCoy. I think there is a way to see Cam McCoy in packages, but I think you're going to see more than Cam McCoy in packages. So let me be very clear. What I gave the hypothetical of is if Southern says Jalen Woods starting quarterback and we're going to roll with him the entirety of the game, I still think you see Cam McCoy a couple of times. But I don't think that they're going to go with this approach. I think they're going to go Cam McCoy, Jalen Woods. This game, as much as it matters, it doesn't matter to the end goal. This matters for bragging rights. This matters for playing against a top-tier team. But sometimes you want to just see if my quarterbacks can measure up in live game reps. And that's a different conversation than we've had previously. So when I'm looking at Southern's quarterback situation, I think that you may see a couple of drives out of Woods, a couple of drives out of McCoy. And it wouldn't shock me if you see that alternating style while you're in the first half. And then when we get to the second half, you begin to see one quarterback, right? Like, it wouldn't shock me to see if, all right, we're going to see how McCoy and we're going to see how Woods perform. We like this one a little bit more. We're going to go ahead and roll with it. Maybe even the first quarter. It might not even extend to the second quarter. But I do think you see both quarterbacks because Terrence Graves doesn't want to tell us. I think he knows who he's going with, but it's a matter if he's confident in that belief or he's leaning to it. Because if you have two quarterbacks and they're close and you know that this game doesn't impact anything at the end of your season for you, you might want to go ahead and try both and get trial and error. I wouldn't even be mad at it. Southern did it last year. They figured out their quarterback situation throughout the season. I'd like if they figured it out a little bit earlier this year. But yeah, I think that you're going to see two quarterbacks. The second storyline is rust. It's rust. This is the first game of the season. It wouldn't be shocking to see players be rusty, and I was listening to Locked On LSU. And Matt Moscona was doing a phenomenal job. That is a great show. If you like LSU, if you like SEC, if you like just checking out the top programs, check out Matt Moscona on Locked On LSU. But I was listening to one of his episodes months ago, and one of the things that he was talking about was LSU's tendency to schedule a big game in week 1 as opposed to week 2. He'd prefer week 2 because it allows you to get your legs underneath you. The thing here is this is a big game in week 1, or the opening game. Technically, it's week 0. I don't know why I just did that with my hands, but technically it's week 0. I think that a bad half could cost you. A bad half could cost you. Just look at Alabama State versus North Carolina Central last year. Alabama State got down 21-0. They got skunked, okay? Now what do? You're trying to fight back, and you do get it to 14-21 at some point, but then I think they extended to 24-14. And the problem with starting slow and trying to come back is you have to have that team, your opponent, have a lull and continue that lull. Momentum doesn't always, it's not just straight line, right? It's not like, oh, pew, and then now we're going up. Sometimes it's up and down. And if you can stall somebody out for a quarter, okay, cool. Maybe you can make up 10 points, but you're down 17. So now when the fourth quarter rolls around, they just have to make a couple of critical plays here and there. That's it. And for me, that's a huge problem. That's a huge problem. You do not want to be rusty. And I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to be rusty. You haven't played football since December. North Carolina Central hasn't played football since November. Right? Like, I know you have spring practice, but you haven't played live games since then. So it'll be really interesting. Rust could be the thing that costs the team. One team comes out slow, one team comes out fast. I don't know if anybody's going to be able to make up that deficit. I'm just being real with you. Now, as we push forward, our key to victory, and that's the most difficult part, but I'm going to give you the key to victory for each team in the MEAC-SWAC challenge as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for the bold predictions, live for the preseason hunches. Maybe you already feel confident about who's going to be your MVP candidate. I think Jaden Daniels is a really good candidate. I think he has good odds too. So if you want to make a nice return, Jaden Daniels is one of those guys. If you want to talk about a dark horse who's going to be in the divisional race, I like my Saints. I don't think that this is a good division, and I think it's very takeable. But you know what? For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on these type of deals, right? Because you have season projections like the MVP, Super Bowl winner. I don't touch that. And you have divisional winners. Everything is present for you for 24 hours, midnight to midnight. You can kick your season off right. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets now, because Future Day is just one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day, every day, making all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. Now, we're going to wrap up and close out with a look at the key to victory. And this is easily the most difficult part. And I'm going to keep it relatively brief today because we haven't seen these guys, right? Like I could be completely wrong about Walker Harris's tendencies in 2025. He could change those. They may not even go run heavy at Southern. Chris Mosley may not be the guy. Like, there's so many different things. So I'm going to try to rely on some reliable principles and players as we do our key to victory, because this is the first time we've seen these guys. I'm going to start off with Southern. Just give me good quarterback play. I don't know how much they're going to have to pop up. I'm going to work with my assumption, right? That Trey Holly is going to be the engine of that offense. That Trey Holly is going to be a guy that makes the work of the quarterback easier because he can get you into 2nd and 6. He can get you in a 3rd and 2, right? Like, that's what you want out of a running back. You want to be able to keep, or just an offense, period. You want to be able to keep moving forward. You don't want 2nd and 13s. You don't want 3rd and 7s. You want 2nd and 5s, 2nd and 7s, 3rd and 1s, 3rd and 3s. You like to stay ahead of the chains, and I think Trey Holly can help you do that. But then when it comes to the quarterback, I think that North Carolina Central is too good of a team for you to not have big plays by your quarterback. And what I mean by that is, in different offenses, depending on who you are, you got quarterbacks who you can win with or win because of, right? And guys, in these type of games, you're always going to need a couple of plays. Are you going to need 3 to 4 plays? Are you going to need 5 to 7 plays? And I think that when you're facing teams like Central, you have to lean more so towards 5 to 7, even if your quarterback typically is a 3 to 4 guy. Now, can Cam McCoy and Jalen Woods make those plays? Time will tell. But you need good quarterback play, because there's going to be moments where you have to defend the pass, or where you have to pass the ball. Because I think North Carolina Central is going to do a good job defending the run at moments. I don't know how often it's going to happen, because I believe in Holly. I want to see what that offensive line is like. But you're going to need your quarterback to step up at some point. This is not one of those games where you can just run the football and coast by. I do not believe that it's going to work that way. So for Southern, give me quality quarterback play. And it doesn't have to be 400 yards. It needs to be timely plays. It needs to be playing mistake-free football. It needs to be, and mistake-free football is not just interceptions. It's bad sacks. It's Cam McCoy trying to overuse his athleticism and maybe getting sacked for a 5-6 yard loss when it could have been a 2-yard loss or an 8-yard loss compared to a 2-3 yard loss, right? Like these are things that we have to play mistake-free football with. We can't be throwing the ball in the dirt when it's third down. These are mistake-free football, critical moments, third down, red zone, 2 minutes. What's some other critical moments? But just got to have it moments. When you got to have it and the quarterback needs to make it happen, it needs to happen at least 2 out of the 3 times. That's what I feel like in this type of game. Then for North Carolina Central, stop Ckelby Givens. Stop Ckelby Givens because Givens is a star. Givens is the most reliable player. Let me say this. If there was anybody on either team that I had the most confidence in to absolutely change how this game looks, it's Ckelby Givens, the Southern defensive end. When you look at the position he plays, when you look at the quality of his play, not only does he play a position that is ripe for destroying a game, he also has the quality to do it. We've seen him do it. I've seen him get multi-sack games. Here's the thing about Givens is that he's impactful in the pass game. He's impactful in the run game. So no matter if you want to drop back with Mosley or drop back with Harris or run the ball with Mosley, you have to watch for Givens because Givens is going to get into the backfield. Now, I would love to see what happens if, and I wish I knew his positional layout, but Givens versus Trevon Humphrey, 2 first-team all-conference players. Now, that could be really interesting. I think Trevon Humphrey versus Ckelby Givens has the potential to be a star-studded matchup. If we see that every play or maybe 70% of the plays, that may be the deciding story, right? That may be the deciding matchup. I wish I would have put it on there, but you just don't know for sure. I hate for him to rush from the offense's right with Humphrey on the offensive left, and now we never see this matchup that I hyped up. But in general, if North Carolina Central wants to have an easier route to victory, they need to stop Ckelby Givens, period, because he can and will wreck shop if you let him. Southern needs to have good quarterback play. There's a few stars from North Carolina Central that I just didn't mention. That's just how it goes. Can't mention everybody, but North Carolina Central is such a good team that I expect them to be back. So maybe I'll mention guys like Vassell. Maybe I'll mention guys like Urin. Maybe I'll mention these players. But until then, I have to wait until the next time that they're on the game of the week, which I already know one for sure. So, but anyway, in the meantime, in between time, we'll be back on Monday to talk about this game and maybe 2 Monday mailboxes. I don't know. I don't know how this is going to go, but I do want to keep this as a part of our weekly scheduling, even when the season begins. So it's going to probably be Mondays are going to be for the game of the week recap and Monday mailbox, either 2. I don't know how that's going to be dispersed, but we'll probably do both of those things every Monday throughout the season. And you'll see how programming changes for the other days of the week. But in the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.